Hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us today and thank you for those of you who signed in early. I've left it I left it a couple of minutes before I actually got going as there's quite a few people signing in at the last minute, as this is a very popular session. But thank you once again for joining us for today's session, which is Managing and Troubleshooting Cluster 360 Degrees. I hope while she was waiting you did have a chance to check out some of our upcoming webinars. We've got two really good sessions coming up. The next one is on May the 8th, and that's presented by Randolph Geese. He's an Oracle ACE director and a member of the Oak Table. And this session is on analyzing and troubleshooting Oracle parallel execution. So if that's something that you're interested in or something that you would like a bit of help with, please do register for that session. The next session is on May the 22nd, and that's presented by Jonathan Lewis, another member of the Oak Table, another Oracle ACE director, and he's going to be discussing the built-in performance monitoring systems in Oracle and SQL Server. He'll actually be discussing this with a SQL Server DBA. So if you've attended some of the past discussions that Jonathan's done with Grant Fritchie, you'll know this is a really great session. As always, you can register for these sessions and find out more at redgate.com/oracle-webinars. So today's main presenter is Syed Jaffar Hussain. If you're on Twitter, you can connect with Syed at @sjaffar Hussain. Syed's an Oracle ACE director. He was DBA of the year 2011, as presented by Oracle Magazine. He's an Oracle author, technical editor, and speaker, a highly qualified DBA. Syed will tell you a little bit more about himself when he comes online, or rather when I hand over to him. He's actually already online. As always, I'm James Mercer. You can connect with me at All Things Oracle. I'm the creator and editor of allthingsoracle.com, and I work at Redgate Software. This topic, as I guess quite a lot of the ones that I host, is extremely valuable to the wider community. The kind of things that the topics or the subject that Syed will be going over. As you learn stuff, please do share that with the community. If there's anything that you think is valuable valuable to share with your own networks, please do so. If you're on Twitter, there's some suggestions for some handles and some hashtags if you want there as well. As I say, the main thing is if there's something you feel the community would benefit from, then please do share it. Before we get going, just a couple of points. Everybody will be on mute for the duration of the event. If at any time you can't hear me, please do let me know. Please do type in the questions or the chat box. Obviously, check your own audio settings first. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, but as we come across things during the session, and there's things that you would like a little bit more explanation on at the end, please do feel free to type questions in advance. We won't be able to answer these questions until the end, but sometimes it's quite a good idea that as you think of things, just to jot them down straight away. This session is being recorded. Full recording of the webinar will be put up online shortly afterwards, and I will email everybody to let you know when that is up. So this webinar is brought to you by Redgate and the deployment suite for Oracle. For those of you that come to the sessions regularly, I hope you've had a chance to check out the tools that we produce for Oracle developers and DBAs at redgate.com/Oracle. For those of you that may not have heard about Redgate before, we're a tools vendor. We specialize in tools for Oracle developers and DBAs, in particular to help you with deployment and comparison tasks. So we've got a main tool set, which is the deployment suite for Oracle. It comprises of 3 tools: Schema Compare for Oracle, Data Compare for Oracle, and a brand new tool called Source Control for Oracle. You can find out more about these tools at redgate.com/Oracle. If you do want to hang around after this presentation, I will be doing a quick 5 to 10 minute demonstration of source control for Oracle. As I mentioned, this is a brand new tool. It's a tool that's going to make it a lot easier, much easier for you to source control database code. So that's something that you're having difficulties with, or maybe it's something you're just considering. You might already, your company might already source control application code, but if you're thinking of source controlling database code, or you have a manual process or a complex process and you want to make your life and your team easier, please do hang around after the presentation for a quick demonstration. And you can see on the screen here, we've just got a little image of the interface. So it's a really lovely looking tool, and as I say, it will make your lives a lot easier. As well as the tools that we produce, one thing that the Redgate is committed to is providing support for people using the tools and the technologies that we're involved with. Sorry, I'll just quickly click on the questions. Thank you for jotting questions in. So we're committed to helping you do your jobs better, and we're committed to helping you learn more about Oracle, learn more about the technologies and more about database. There's a section on the Redgate website, redgate.com/Oracle-education, that you can find out more. But things like the free webinars that we do is all part of this dedication to helping you do your jobs better. As I mentioned before, I'm the creator and editor of allthingsoracle.com. Please do check out the website. I've got an image here actually of an article that I published today, which is on Rack OneNode by an Oracle ace called Aman Sharma. Please do check that out at allthingsoracle.com. We also run a number of free ebook offers. Okay, so I think that's enough about Redgate for the moment. As I mentioned, please do hang around afterwards to see a demonstration of source control for Oracle. But now I'm going to hand over to Syed Jaffar Hussain, who's going to present the main topic today, which is managing and troubleshooting cluster 360 degrees. Please do bear with us as I hand things over. There may be a short delay. Actually, just before I do hand over, I just got a note from Aman that he's in the audience today, so thank you for joining us today. And once again, please do check out his article on allthingsoracle.com.
Hello.
Hi, Syed. I can hear you very well, so thank you. I shall leave things with you now.
Okay. Hi everyone. Welcome once again. My name is Syed Jaffar Hussain. Join you for this session from Saudi Arabia. Today's session is about managing and troubleshooting cluster. It is going to be a technically deep dive session, and what you are going to learn today is all about how things get started in Clusterware. If you have any problems when you start the Clusterware, how you're going to troubleshoot and debug them in order to make them up and running again. Thank you once again for joining the session. Here is a little bit introduction about myself. As most of you already aware of me, my name is Syed Jaffar Hussain. I work for a bank as a database support manager. I have over 20 years of IT experience, including 14 years as an Oracle DBA. For my contribution to the Oracle community and the work that I have done, delivered to my employers, as a Oracle DBA. Oracle has recognized my efforts and they awarded me Technology of the Year as a DBA back in 2011. I'm also an Oracle Edge Director. I do have certification in 10G as OCM, Oracle Certified Master, and I have done little on ITL as well. So 2 years ago I wrote a book along with my friend co-author Ben Puriskin on 11G Release to Real Application Cluster Essentials, and now currently I am authoring another book with 3 more authors, Riaz, Kai, and Tariq, Expert Oracle Rack. It's going to be released sometime very soon, and this book is going to be on 12C. Before we get started about discussing how to manage and troubleshoot your environment, I would like to share some information about the importance of managing and or administrating and troubleshooting things at your environment. A famous personality in the Oracle community once compared an Oracle DBA with Pilot. So you might be wondering what is the similarity between Oracle DBA and Pilot. So if you can, it's not technically, but if you look at the way how they work is really similar to Oracle DBA. For example, I'll give you a small example. Like when I attended my Oracle Open World back in 2011, I catch a flight from Dubai to San Francisco, and it was a single stretch 16 hours flight. Imagine during that 16 hours, how long a pilot works. Most importantly, his concern will be like having a safe landing and takeoff. And during the course of this 16 hours, he'll be just managing the things. It is more important that when things arises, how to troubleshoot and how to handle is most important, because I remember like more than 500 people boarded on the plane, so it's the responsibility of the pilot to know each and everything in case if something goes wrong. So likewise, Oracle DBAs also should be careful, and they have to be all the time on their toes while they manage their critical environments, rack environments, because it is very important for the organization, the availability, because it can make and break a company's reputation. So this is what I would like to start with, the importance of management and troubleshooting things. As I just discussed, in my perspective, any deployment, either installation or upgrading existing environment to a new release, is a single shot. What I mean single shot means it is just one-time job. Once you are done with the installation or upgrade, then rest of the things that you foresee is managing your environments and then troubleshooting the errors that comes. So whereas administration and troubleshooting is like a never-ending story. As I said earlier on, this is going to be technically deep dive session, and what you're going to learn today is I'll just very quickly run through some of the new Clusterware release features. Most of them might be already aware, but this is for those people who are new to the cluster technology or maybe just started their career as a DBA. So I'm going to take through some of the very important changes in 11G Release 2 cluster. This will actually build the momentum for our presentation. So bear with me in case if you're already aware of these new features. So we will jump into start to see what is actually changed in 11G Release 2 cluster stack. So we will be having some comparison during the course of this presentation with the earlier releases and 11G Release 2. And also I will let you know how things get started when you start up a cluster manually, or when a node rebooted or manually booted, how things get started cluster, and what is the sequence, what are those important daemon processes that Oracle brings up on the sequence and all the stuff. And we will move on to discuss and the logs, very important logs for the cluster, how you can analyze those logs to find out the root cause of your problem, and how you can diagnose with the little information that is available in the logs. And most importantly, the thing is troubleshooting cluster startup failures. So it is very important that to aware what level you have issues. which layer you are having issues. So bringing up cluster is most important. Like you take a very safe takeoff of a plane, like you do the troubleshoot, you start up the Clusterware. And also we will move on discussing a little bit about how to debug more Oracle daemon processes to get more potential information in case the default logging information is not enough or does not give you the hint of your problem. Later on, I will discuss about some tools and utilities. This is very important. We might come across of various tools and utilities. Maybe there are a number of tools and utilities provided by the Oracle to handle the clusterware in terms of like to measure the performance, maybe to do proactive maintenance, and also to troubleshoot node evictions, maybe cluster logs and all the stuff. So I will show you what are the important tools that you can use and how to pick the right one at the correct time. And I will wrap up the session by taking some question and answer later on. So here are some new changes that introduced in 11G Release 2 cluster. First of all, the clusterware now has become as a grid infrastructure. So what is grid infrastructure is basically a single home for Oracle clusterware and ASM. Pre-11G Release 2, if you were managing cluster, you manage individual homes for ASM as well as for clusterware. So whereas with 11G Release 2, you store them together in a single directory called grid home. Though the functionality of ASM and clusterware remains distinct, but they are stored together in a single directory. And this is for some other reasons as well, because you have Oracle restart and these features to manage these features. And you can have grid infrastructure and grid infrastructure for standalone server as well. In case if you're not going for the rack still and you want to make use of ASM, then you need to have grid home where this grid infrastructure will be stored. As you all know that if you are managing cluster, as you all know that the critical components of any clusterware is two disk, OCR, Oracle Cluster Registry, and voting disk. So these are very critical for the functionality of the cluster. And you need to make sure that they are guarded very well, and you make them redundant and all the stuff. Before 11G Release 2, you could use a shared storage or any cluster file system shared across all nodes, or maybe raw disks. The basic requirement was a shared disk that should be shared among all the nodes so that everybody can read and write. Now with 11G Release 2, now you can put your OCR into an ASM disk group. This way you can get rid of the other layer like storage, cluster file system and all the stuff. And you can also, with 11G Release 2, it is very well possible that you can have a OCR stored in ASM and another on a shared storage. That's quite possible. However, with 11G, with 12C, Oracle does not support the raw storage, SAN storage anymore to store your OCR voting disk. So it is very important that you move your OCR and voting to ASM in case in the future you have plans to move to 12C, of course after 12C announced. In contrast to 11G Release 2, you could have 3 copies. You can maintain 3 copies of OCR. You can have redundancy like mirror copies, 2 mirror copies and 1 OCR. Now with 11G Release 2, now you can have 5 copies of OCR files, and you can store them, as I told you. You can store 1 copy in ASM, another one on storage, or you can store OCRs into different ASM disk groups as well. Another new layer that is introduced in 11G Release 2 is Oracle Local Registry. As we all just learned about Oracle Cluster Registry, it is a centralized registry accessed across all the nodes in the cluster. This is a local registry, so every node has its own copy of Oracle Local of that particular node. So this is not shared between the nodes. This is owned by the local node. This is very important for the new layer introduced in 11G release 2, which is Oracle High Availability Service daemon. And this Oracle local registry is configured and automatically backed up after installation, fresh installation, or maybe if you upgrade your cluster from 10 to 11 R2 or 11.1 to 11 R2. So this will be created automatically upon installation or upgrade. And more importantly, this file also get backed up automatically after the installation or upgrade. And this plays a quite very important role for the local node, because it has all the important information about the local node and resources stored in the OLR, Oracle Local Registry. This also actually helps CRS cluster to start up automatically if you have your hosting and voting disk stored in ASM. So as we all know, ASM is a service that comes up basically after the cluster ready services. However, before the cluster ready services, you need to have cluster synchronization demand process up and running. So how people will get confused if I put my OCR, so how things will get started. So this is where this is going to play a very important role. This assists OHSSD to bring up the cluster synchronization demand process, although you have your cluster OCR and voting disks placed in ASM. You can also check the details, OCR check minus local. It will produce the size and where it is located. So the file will be stored under the grid home C data host name. Basically is the host name, maybe rack 1, rack 2, whatever host you are using. And the file name will start with the host name with extension OLR. And likewise, similar to how you backup manually, physically, you can backup the local OCR as well. You all know the importance of voting disk. Voting disk is a small file managed on a shared disk. This is very important because all the nodes will be putting their presence there, and it's very important. And in case if this becomes inaccessible, there is a possibility that your node can evade. Pre-11G release 2. We can multiplex this file in order to avoid the single point of failure. So with 11G release 2, you can store voting disk as well in ASM disk group. So, but if you compare with OCR can have different disk groups. You can store a different copy into different ASM disk groups, whereas voting disk has quite limitations. It can be stored in only one one ASM disk group. So how are you going to manage the multiplexing? How are you going to manage the mirror copies? So this is basically subject to the ASM disk group redundancy. If you use external redundancy, you will have only one single copy of your voting disk. And if you create ASM disk group with a normal redundancy, you will see 3 copies. And if you use high redundancy disk group, ASM redundancy, you will see 5. So it will also support 5. That means it is linked with, connected with the type of redundancy level that you used with the ASM. And also you can have your voting disk and ASM disk group. You can have your OCR on storage. So you can have this mixture of settings. But in the future, since Oracle is going to support the raw storage, so I would recommend you all to move on to migrating your voting and OCR disk or ASM disk group. Another important thing is clusterized clusterware commands. If you are working with a small environment like with 2 nodes, it's okay to check the health of your cluster across all nodes. You can visit, you can log into every node and then check cluster status, health, and you can start the cluster. What if you are managing a large scaled cluster environment where you have more than 20 nodes, hundreds of nodes? So this cluster commands give the flexibility to manage the clusterware from a single node. For example, using cluster command, you can stop most of the nodes, all nodes. And you can also, for example, if you are on node 1 and you want to stop node 2, you can very well do that using cluster minus n and then node name. Likewise, you stop all clusters from one node. Also, you can verify the overall health of cluster nodes with a single command. This is supported by the new layer. Oracle High Availability Service daemon is responsible for these remote operations. So talking about the changes in 11G release 2 with regards to cluster ready services daemon, it's a complete redesign. 11G release 2 has a complete redesign of the functionality of CRSD, and they have introduced a new layer, a new daemon, OHSD, Oracle High Availability Service daemon. And also it replaces all the RAG layers with agent layers. So basically you will no longer see the RAG in processes in 11G release 2, as they are replaced with the Aura root agent and Aura agent layer. So it is now agent based. OHSD and CRSD owns two sets of agents, Aura agent and Aura root agent. So you will see these names two times. So one is owned by the CRSD process and the other one is owned by the OHSD. And these are the processes that are responsible for starting, stopping, verifying, and clearing the things of your C clusters, CRSD, CSS, EVM, ASM resources, basically all the resources. The another new thing that was introduced with 11G release 2 is you can start a cluster in exclusive mode for the maintenance purpose. So when you start up, this is possible only one node. For example, if you have two nodes and you want to start one node in exclusive mode whilst the second node is up and running, you cannot quite do that. So let's say your cluster is completely down. Now you can bring up your cluster in a one node in exclusive mode for a maintenance purpose. And when you bring in the node in cluster mode, exclusive mode, started in exclusive mode, you don't need the outing disk. Even if you don't have outing disk, it will be started, and you don't need even the interconnection or anything. If you want to know about what are those layers introduced with 11G release 2 in terms of resources, you can all the time type crsctl start res -t. What is important is -int. So you will see all those initialized resources. In cluster, in 11G release 2, the clusterware stack has categorized into two stacks, the upper stack and the lower stack. So the upper stack was cluster ready services, and the lower stack is Oracle High Availability Service daemon. The upper stack is responsible of bringing CRS, CSS, CSD agent, whereas the lower stack brings in the Aura root agent and other processes. So how things get started? For example, if your node is rebooted, or you just shut down your node and you started, and you as a DBA you must be aware how things get started. So you should know all this internal mechanism how things get started. So every on Unix or Linux platforms, there is an entry key point registered under the etc init tab file. So this entry will be entered after the installation or upgrade. If you are if you know in 10G or 11G release 1, you need to you will see three scripts, one for CRSD, another for CSSD, and EVMD. But in 11G release 2, there is only one entry that starts the OHSD, Oracle High Availability Service daemon, which is responsible directly or indirectly to bring up the rest of the cluster and resources. On Linux 6, you don't see this file because this file is no longer exists, but you will see the clusters start script like etc init file init.d. All the cluster started in like 0 to 4 levels. In the first level 0, the operating system kickstarts the OHSD process, and level 1, the OHSD basically starts 4 very important agents, which are CSSD monitor, Aura root agent, Aura agent, and CSS agent. And level 2, the Aura agent is responsible to bring up the services like ASM, as I told you, UVMD, GPND. And Aura root agent is important to start the cluster ready services, cluster time synchronization, and disk monitoring. CSSD agent is the one which brings up the cluster synchronization daemon. As I told you earlier on that OHSD and CRSD owns a set of agents, Aura root agent and Aura agent. So if you look at this point where CRSD is then now spanned through two more agents, and these two agents then bring up the resources, cluster resources, your database, listener, and all other stuff. So this is the broad picture of startup sequence. First it gets started, OHSD gets started using the OLR because it's very important to read, and GPNP service. When it starts cluster synchronization service, it has to have the access to the voting disk in case if there is permission problem or maybe voting disks are missing, then cluster synchronization service will not start. If CSSD does not start, your cluster will not start, and also the other processes will not be started. And then after the CSSD, event EVMD, which is event manager daemon process, and then finally your cluster ready service daemon, who is responsible to start all your services like database, listener, database service, and other stuff. It is also very important as a DBA to understand the logs, which logs to review, examine in case if you have some problems, and you have to be all the time proactive in that context. You have to be reviewing the log files produced by the individual daemon process. So we have some of the very important log files on your screen. Alert log file, CRSD log, OCSSD log, OHSD, EVMD, and of course some of the operating system log files. So we will be going through all these log files. We will see the importance and what kind of information they have it, and how we can utilize that information maybe as a proactive or maybe reactive based. We all knew that every database has a alert log file where all most important sequence events are registered, like database stop, and when you resize data file, create a data file, when log switch, all the events are registered. And we all believe that whenever things goes wrong, and this is the foremost file, very important a file that to be reviewed, examined to understand the nature of the problem. And also if you are doing proactive maintenance, this is the file that you quite often review and examine it. So every cluster on each node, it maintains alert log as well. So every node has its own alert log located under grid home, log, and host name. So you will find a alert name. For example, if the host name is rack1, you will find a file with the name alert rack1.log. So what information we can see in this log? We can see that when cluster started up, OHSSD process is started, you can see the information. This is just not to see a startup message. You can also see stop messages, and if the cluster becomes unhealthy. So for any clusterware problem, you can have a look at and you can examine this log to troubleshoot the problems. You can this file also will give you the node eviction messages. The good thing in 11G release 2 is now whenever the event is registered, returned to the file, it also give you the pointer to the log file where the more information is written. So this is quite handful, useful basically, so that you can review the log pointed out for more, to drill down more information about the problem. OLR events like local registry events, like if it becomes inaccessible, corrupted, or maybe when it gets started and all the stuff. Also OCR disk related messages. And you can also see which nodes are part of the cluster now, which nodes are active. So for this information you can review. I would recommend you to at least pay attention to this log, maybe once in a day, or before you start the day and then before you end the day. This is a good file. You can put this file in the monitoring that as part of your monitoring job. As I said in the beginning, like preferably the first log file to review upon any cluster issues. And here are a few excerpts from the alert log file. This is the information is basically written. So you see in the beginnings here when the OHSD service is started up, and in case if some resources get failed to start up, and also let's say if your CSSD is unable to identify or maybe discover the voting file, or if the voting file becomes online, see the third message represents that no voting file found or voting disks are missing. Likewise, you see the message at the bottom says the node is going to evict, and also you will see the reason, like which thread of the cluster synchronization daemon process is caused the node eviction. So this gives you the rough and the beginning idea where to kickstart your troubleshooting. Another one in the logs is the CRSD log. CRSD log is managed by the cluster ready service daemon process, which is responsible to monitor all your resources registered in the OCR. For example, database, listener, virtual IP and all the stuff. And also whenever you have issues with startup and stop of these resources, because the information will be returned to the CRSD log, so you can have a look at it. And also if you have issues with the OCR, you can also review this log file. The other one and very important is OCSSD. It is managed and maintained by the cluster synchronization daemon process, and this is one of the busiest log file. You see every second it's being updated, and it writes quite a lot of important and critical information, like the intercommunication messages that it send and pinging between the nodes. You can see the variety of messages, like in case if the cluster synchronization service does not start up, this is the file to review. In the coming slides, I'm going to explain when we discuss about the cluster startup issues. And also, for example, you have a two node rack, and in case for some reason if rack 2 node is evicting, this information is written in the CSSD log of rack 1 node. First node. So you can examine this file, and it tell you that it started with 90%, 75%, 20%, and then bang, your node will be evicted, the other node. So it will give you the, you cannot prevent the node eviction within a very short span, but at least you know the reasons why the node got evicted. Another useful log is OHSD, which is maintained by the Oracle High Availability Services. This is the first daemon process that gets started up when you start your Clusterware on the node. And in case if you, for example, if you are doing any fresh installation and you fail with executing the root.sh, or if you are doing an upgrade to your existing cluster environment with 11G release 2, and if you come across any problems, if you encountered some problems, this is the log file where you can look for about the problems. And also, in case if you have some issues with the Oracle local registry, because of that, if your OHSD does not start, so this is the file to review. And here is the uniformed cluster log directory structure. You see it is under grid home, log, and hostname, under which you have subdirectories for each component of your cluster. There is one alert log for the cluster, OHSD, under which you will have bunch of OHSD log files, similarly CRSD and CSSD. I'm going to give you a bit idea and information about why we have 10 files and the importance of these archiving files. Sometimes it is very important to fix, identify root cause, the cluster startup, or maybe when cluster goes unhealthy issues. So it is very important to review the OS level logs also. So every operating system has a different OS log. For example, you work with HP UX, you find a log file called syslog under the var adm and syslog directory. So this is the log that maintained by the system, your operating system. So for any cluster unhealthy issues or why your cluster is not starting, so this is one of the file that you can review. And similarly on AX, you have to use bin rpt-a. On Linux, you use messages log file. And Windows, so you always refer the Windows event management, and Solaris, you have a messages file again. I have come across of some people or maybe some OS administrator, because when you work with the rack, it is not just a single component or single layer. It is ingredients of multiple layers. You have network, you have operating system, you have storage, you have cluster software. So sometimes OS, OS administrator, they tend to have a script to run across every month, run through every month to remove the trace and log files in order to free up some space. So if you are maintaining that kind of job, I would strongly recommend you to exclude these cluster log files, as they are managed automatically. So this slide tells you do not manage these log files manually, is not recommended. Managing these files manually is not recommended. That means don't resize, don't delete these files. Why? Because they are governed and managed automatically by the Oracle cluster. Most of the files, they work on 10 by 10 rule as part of the automatic rotation and retention policy. If you could if you could go back to this this slide, you see there are 10 copies of OHSD, CRSD, and CSSD also. So why they are there? Because they are part of the 10 into 10 rule. That means it will retain 10 copies of 10 MB. So CRSD, EVMD, OHSD, these files will be archived after 10 MB. For example, you have a file, started writing into it like CRSD, and once the CRSD becomes 10 meg, it will be archived as CRSD dot and then the extension, as you see on the screen in the green text. So this is because automatically your cluster is managing, so that you will not have a single file very large. And then these are only 10 into 10 formula. So when the 11th file comes, the one which was created earlier, the first one, will be overwritten. So you don't need to worry about the management of these log files, as they are maintained and managed automatically on a retention and rotation policy base. However, for CRSD is a bit different. CSD, it works with the 10 into it works with the 10 archive files, but the size of this log file will be 50 MB. As you know, as I said earlier on, this is the very busiest file. It keeps writing the messages. And also sometimes if you have set the debugging level to higher, you will tend to get more and more information in the logs. So don't manage manually these files. Let me tell you an interesting thing, like what if I remove a file? For example, we all know that if we remove database alert log file, and whenever there is a new event is written to the alert log file, and the file get created automatically. Now here the interesting part is, like let's say I have removed my CSSD log file, but at the time when I removed the file, it was not quite 50 meg, it was like 10 MB. And people might wonder why, what happened, my CSD log is not recreated. This is because at the time you removed the log file, it was not quite 50 MB, so it has to wait till it gets filled in and then move on to the archiving formula. So although you remove the file from the OS, but cluster keeps the size monitoring OS level, and then once it goes to the 50 MB, you will see a new file. So how you can create? The only thing is you have to start the service, so which is not quite possible in the production environment. So the objective of this slide is not to manage these files manually, because they are governed and managed on 10 by 10 formula. Okay, let's move on to some happy faces information. As a rack DBA, as a rack administrator, you always have a broad smile when you see these messages like all your demand services are online, like your OHSD, CRSD, CSSD, and event manager, right? So this is what we want to see all the time. And here is a sad face of a rack DBA on a bad day. Things can go worst, or things can go and can become a nightmare to any rack administrator. Imagine just you just try to verify the cluster, CRS, CTL, check CRS or cluster, and then you come across or you encountered CRS 4639. For example, if the cluster is not running or Oracle High Availability Service is not up, the 4639 is likely to come up on the screen. So that means your OHSD service is not up. And in case you're trying to start up the OHSD service, CRS, CTL start, CRS maybe, then if there are any issues pertaining to the startup of your cluster, so this error 4124 comes on the screen. So that means the first error says that your service is not running. The second one is saying that your service is unable to start up due to various reasons. That we're going to find out after a short while. Likewise, every service represents one distinct error message. For example, CSSD, CRSD, and UVMD, they represent different messages. So, all right, now let's start with the beginning. So if you remember a few slides earlier on, I have told you OHSD was the first process that starts up, and then which is responsible to start up the rest of the cluster and services either direct or indirect way. So what if you are unable to start the service, OHSD itself? So what could be the issue? So these slides talks about most of the common causes when OHSD does not come up. Now let's say that you rebooted your machine, the node, or maybe node eviction or node crash happened, and the subsequent startup, when you query, you see that your clusterware is not up, and you might be wondering what happened, what went wrong. So the first thing we need to see, OHSD is up or not. So when you type the CRS, CTL, check CRS, the first thing you come across is could not connect Oracle High Availability Service. This means your OHSD is not running. So you have to find out why it is not running. First of all, let's check if it is exist or not. So maybe one reason might be that your cluster ready, your CRS is not auto start enabled. So you have to find out if your cluster stack is auto configured to start up automatically. And the second one is to check the run level permission for this daemon process. And then you can also, I'm not going through the sequence, so it can be anything. You can pick anything randomly and do your investigation. So keep in mind that this is not a sequence. So you can also check the existence of OHSD service. Maybe it get hanged. So ps-ef grep OHSD on a Unix or Linux platform to tell you that. And also maybe the entry point in the init tab is missing. Basically it should be there, maybe for some reason, or maybe the old file was restored or something. So you have to have verification in init tab whether this entry is exist or not. Now the other thing is also to examine the OHSD log file to see why your OHSD service does not come up and what are the problems. And lastly, you can also check if there are any permissions for your grid home or get changed or something. So I'll tell you in the next slide how you can have it, how you can troubleshoot these common startup issues. The first thing is make sure the auto startup is enabled. If in your previous slide you found out that the auto startup is not enabled, so this is the command as the root user. You have to sign in as a root user on the node and enable the auto startup of your cluster. CRS-CTL enable high availability service, or CRS, they are the same. And then subsequently start up your service, CRS-CTL, CRS. And also, okay, in case if you don't have that entry, you can put in this entry in the tab like file and then start your cluster manually. Maybe you felt that it is auto-enabled and the entry exists. And the third thing you can see is you can review the OHSD log file, and then if there are any problems with the Oracle local registry, for example, if it is inaccessible for some reasons like permission gets lost, or maybe ownership gets lost, or maybe the OCR is OLR is corrupted. So for that reasons, you can examine the OHSD log file and then take appropriate actions. In case if it's a permission issue, you can reassign the permission and start up the cluster once again. If it is corrupted, try to restore from the valid backup. As I told you, it will get backed up automatically post installation and upgrade. In case if you don't have a backup, then you have to deconfigure your cluster and then run the root.crs in order to recreate the OLR. And also, when you find all things are in place, and then the quick and dirty way is that you can remove the some cluster files which are zero-sized. They are actually created at the time of startup. Sometimes, if due to some, it's not logical, but I have come across of this situation because I manage 4 cluster environments, 20 node. You have 7 node, 3 node, and 6 node. So we have come across of all the scenarios, you name it. So this is a file. It's created upon cluster is started. So you are not supposed to remove it. That's why Oracle has put these files in a hidden file. .extension.oracle. So you can go to user temp and move or remove this file and then try to start your cluster. If not, these problems are, of course, you need to open a tar with Oracle and then see, maybe there could be a hit, there could be a bug hitting, or maybe it could be something from the OS level. So you need to open a tar with Oracle and then take their assistance for any issues. Imagine your OHSD service is up, but your cluster service is not coming up. Cluster service is the main thing that brings up your cluster. If this service is not started, then the subsequent services like EVMD and CRSD, no way that they can start up. And you need to examine the common issues, what could be went wrong. I have seen mostly that CSSD could not start it up because maybe you have lost voting disk permission, or maybe voting disk become inaccessible, or maybe some ownership is changed, maybe there are some issues with the private interconnect. I cannot see other means. So there could be many reasons. And also, as I told you, that you can also need to check. You will also have to check for the OCSSD daemon existence on the node. So for that, you can execute the command ps-ef grep OCSSD bin. How do I troubleshoot these common issues? First of all, you need to examine the OCSSD log file to make sure that there is no voting disk issues you are able to access, and also try to run CRS-CTL query CSS voting disk to verify whether voting disks are available or not. In case if they are not available, then review the OCSSD log to find out what is the actual cause. If disk permissions are lost, then reset them with ownership, appropriate ownership. If there are any underlying network issues, heartbeat issues, then you try to resolve that. I told you to list the resources, critical resources, using the CRS-CTL start res -t and -int. So if you find this is the cluster interconnect is the new resource has been introduced with 11.202 and patch 1. So you will, if there are any interconnect issues, then you will see that the service is offline. So in case if you see the service is offline and you have resolved the underlying problems of the network, you can manually restart instead of you can restore this particular resource instead of the full cluster. And of course, if you find everything is okay and you need to give another try, or for example, if your cluster synchronization service daemon service becomes unhealthy, you can start this one manually using the command explained here. So moving on to CRSD. CRSD is the daemon process responsible for monitoring and managing your resources, database, listener, VIP, and maybe database services and all the stuff. So it will be closely monitoring in case if it goes down, it will start up automatically, right? So CRSD process has this functionality. And in case if CRSD becomes unhealthy or maybe CRSD unable to start off, so you need to go through these checks like verify you are able to access the Oracle cluster registry. You can run the command OCR check to know if OCR is accessible or you don't face any corruptions. Also, more importantly, you have to look for the ownership and permission of the grid home. Maybe sometimes it might get changed for some reason. So also verify the mirror copies issue, verify the internet interconnect network, and more importantly, in case if ASM suffers some problem to come up, and if you have placed your OCR in ASM disk, and you need to see why the ASM is not get started. Because of that, your CRSD does not start completely. And another thing is also to pay attention to the service, whether the service is up or not on the OS level by executing the command ps-ef grep CRSD.bin. And in case if you see it is offline or unhealthy, you can always use the manual command to start up crstl stat res -t. Most importantly, the -int command. So I told you you need to review the CRSD log. These are the troubleshooting common issues. So what are the measures that you can take, or what are the files you can review? What are the steps that you can take to start up your CRSD? This is the command to start manually the CRSD process in case if it is unhealthy or goes offline. And then maybe the Aura agent and the root agent becomes unavailable, and that's why your CRSD is not completely on. So just run this command, check through this command if everything is up or not. So and at the end, what is important is maybe you need to make sure that you don't run into any bugs or something. If you face some bugs, then these things are not going to help you, because you might need to apply a patch. So you definitely need to open a tar with Oracle. So this is the command you see when I type crstl start -t, you will see the cluster interconnect heap, and the other process. Some of the processes are unknown or offline, so that means my cluster is unhealthy. I have a cluster started, CRSD also is unhealthy, and CSSD, everything is unhealthy because the CSSD does not started, so there is no chance that the CRSD will be started. In case if you have any problem with the interconnect, so after you resolve the problem, you can start it up manually using this command. So likewise, you can also start up the CSSD. When you start the CSSD, automatically it will let you start the rest of the services unless the other services doesn't face with other problems. The other important information, as we all learn so far with the past slides, that Oracle, every Clusterware daemon process owns a log file and write the very useful information in the logs. Sometimes under some unusual circumstances, the logging information generated by the process is not sufficient enough to reach the root cause of the problem. So you might be interested in hiring the value of the default tracing level, logging level. So this you can do it online. So for example, let's say your node is suffering from mysterious network heartbeat issues. You can very well examine the CSSD log file where you can see that the heartbeat issues, but the information provided by default is not sufficient for you to understand. So sometimes Oracle might ask you to increase the default debugging or tracing level of the CSSD process, daemon process. So in the few slides I'm going to explain you, in the next subsequent slides I'm going to explain you how to increase the debugging level of individual services. CRSCTL get a log will produce the default tracing and tracing levels of your CRSD or CSS EVMD. So if you want to know what are the default settings of CSSD and the modules underneath of CSS, you type CRSCTL get log CSS all. This produces the modules underneath of CSS daemon process. So you can also list the modules of that particular process. So by default, the tracing and debugging level for most of the important daemon processes are set to 2. As you can see, for cluster synchronization, all the modules they set to 2. So these are the threads and modules, as I could you can say. So to your right is the default modules. You have CSS, CRS, CTSS. So you can use any one. So here is the example. As I told you, if you want to increase the default tracing level, you can use this command as a root user, CRSCTL set log CRS. CRS is the main service, and the CRS main is the module underneath of CRS. So you can also set 2 modules of under a particular service also. So the second example demonstrates. So you are setting the value of CRS main module and CRS EVT event module from 3 to 4. So you are changing it. You can also, in case if you want to set a process modules to a particular value, you can do that using the set log CRS all is equal to 5. This will set the tracing level 5 to all the modules that comes under the CRS process. Anyways, you should not be doing it unless you get the request or recommendation from Oracle to dig in more about your problems. You can also set the debugging level at the OS level using the ORA CRS debug -all command on the OS level. So this the level of default, the level of tracing is 1 to 5. Default is 2, and if you want to, in order to disable any logging history, logging information, you can do that by just setting the value to 0. So in the first example, it set the CRS main debugging level to 0. That means no information will be produced. Likewise, if you have a database like PRDDB and you want to turn it off, the logging information related to that resource, you can do that. And also, you can also do for the CRS entirely using the -int command. Moving on to tools and utilities, as we all knew, there are a bunch, maybe a bunch of tools that are available either by default or maybe something to download from my Oracle support. So you might have come across of these names in your day-to-day work, like you might have heard about cluster verification utility, system state, or a tab, debugging, the collection, hang analysis. See, these your tools and utilities are used for different purposes. Maybe for as part of proactive maintenance, or when you encounter some problems, so you want to analyze and diagnose the problem. So you use variety of programs. But what is most important for you as a DBA is to pick the right one at the right time instead of going through all these things. So it's better that you have the knowledge about these individual tools and utilities and then use them quite rightly. So in the subsequent slides, I'm going to give a brief explanation and demonstration in the sense through the slides how you can use these utilities to solve problems. So this is a funny slide. It says, oh my God, I have so many, so I'm in a situation I don't know which to use. So you're confused. So it is always very important to choose the right one at the right situation. Let's talk about data collection. I'm sure as a RAG DBA, you might have come across a situation where node evicted at least once, or maybe your clusterware becomes unhealthy. So, and when you don't know the reason, you definitely open a call with Oracle, and then they ask you, the first thing they ask you to collect the log files across all nodes. If you have two nodes, one or two, so there are variety of logs, like dozens of logs. So it's quite time taking for you to collect all these things. So if you have two nodes, it's not a big issue. What if you work with a large-scale cluster environment, like 10 nodes, 20 nodes? So it's going to be time consuming, and then you will lose the interest to collect all this information. So there is a script data collection which is available, which comes by default under the grid home pane location. So this will help you basically gathering the required diagnostical information in a bunch of log files, trace files, reading CRS, CSSD, trace, score files, OCR data as well. Using this script utility, you can collect the information and then upload this information to the Oracle for the further investigation. So this basically reduce your work collecting the information. So it can read from the core files. When things go abnormally, you cannot understand. Maybe we can understand the log file, but we don't understand the core format. So this data collection script will help you gathering the information, diagnostic information from the variety of resources. So when you run this file, it basically collects the information and put it into a file, and it will be zipped so that you will not run into space issues. But they are going to be quite large size files, so Oracle has taken care of that by zipping it at the end. The duration required to gather this information is directly proportional to the level that used. You can take the whole level like CRSD, grid home, database, ASM, and everything. Or if you want, or if you are only interested in CRS home or grid home, you can run that. So that's why I'm telling you the time that takes to gather the information is proportional to the level that you use to gather information. Now the piece of advice from you is don't run when you have peak load on your nodes, because you're going to consume a lot of resources on the node. So I'm always afraid to run this during the peak hours. So I always show interest running this script maybe when there is not heavy load. So once these files are generated, so you need to upload these to the Oracle support if you open a tab for further investigation. So here are the few examples about the collection, how you can run it. So the first example shows how you can collect the diagnostic information just for cluster home, which is grid infrastructure home. Sorry. Alternatively, you can also use the command line OCLM to suppose sometimes you are interested only to pick up the information, time-based information from this period to this period instead of going through the longer period. So this is very well possible using the OCLM command, specifying the time and all the stuff. So this example basically explains you how you can collect the information, diagnostical information from the cluster home, how you can collect incident-based and time-based. So those are the 5 files, 4 or 5 files that you see finally after the successful execution of the script. These are zipped, then you can then upload these files to Oracle for more support. Cluster Health Monitor. So this is not a new feature, but if you are 11.2023, then you will see this process. Previously, this was called as instantaneous problem detector for OS. Whenever you have performance problems OS level, or maybe you have node evictions, or maybe you have like your cluster become unhealthy. So see, as I told you, that cluster is not a single layer, it involved many layers. So maybe this could be due to the something else that your cluster is suffering. So what is more important for you is to have the statistical information of your operating system as well. You might be the administrators, the OS admin may be having different tools, but it is very important for Oracle point of view to know the history, to know what exactly was happening the time on the node when the node evicted. Maybe your node evicted because due to the lack of resources, the CPU, memory, maybe there was too much swapping. So it's very difficult for you to make the record every second. So this cluster health monitor helps you collecting the real-time statistical, gathering the statistical information on your OS. So on every node, it collects the statistical real-time information every 5 seconds from 11 to 03. Previously, it was every 1 second. Now you can change it, like the statistics like memory, swap, network, the top command, how your CPU was utilized, how your memory was utilized, and all stuff. So, and it stores the data into CHM repository. So the repository is 1 GB sized file exists on the OS level, and with 12c there is a new database called management database. So all this repository information is stored in CHM database with 12c. So in 12c you will see that database, this CHM repository is stored in a different database. This data later can be used to analyze and diagnose the node eviction, instance hangs, server performance problems. So how things are managed for cluster health monitoring? So there are two processes, system monitoring service and logger service. So the first service runs on every node. So you will find this service running on every node and collecting the information. And the functionality of this process is to collect the real-time statistical data and send it to logger cluster logger service. So the service basically, unlike the first service, OSysMond, this runs on only one node, on a master node, and other nodes this will run as in standby mode. In case if that node goes down, the master node, the standby node, the other node where this process doing the job as standby will become active and then receive the data and stores it. Maybe you might have heard about OS Watcher. So this is quite close to OS Watcher because OS Watcher also collects similar kind of statistical information on your OS. So why do I use both? Do I need to use both? In case if you are using CHM, if you have configured CHM, then you don't need to have OS Watcher. So there is a little comparison between CHM and OS Watcher. CHM takes less CPU and less overhead in comparison with OS Watcher. For example, if your CPU is heavy, if your node is heavily loaded with the CPU, your OS Watcher does not run. So, and when the point node evicted, then you will you may not see the statistical information of that particular point in time. So, whereas CHM will load every second, even the CPU is heavily loaded. The statistical information is recorded because it uses very little resources on the node. So it consumes less than 5% of CPU core, minimal overhead on the server. As I told you, it takes 1 GB space by default. And the size is subject to the number of days that you want to keep the data. Approximately, maybe if you have a cluster, maybe it's about half GB a day, and data can be kept for 3 days. And you use OCLU mon to manage the repository. As I told you a while ago that with 12c there is a new database called Management Depository Database that will be created when you configure or upgrade to 12c. So if you are pre-11g release 2, then if you don't use the IPDS, instantaneous problem detector, then you must having OS Watcher all the time up and running, because this is very important in order to analyze the node evictions, instance hang, or maybe the node hang analysis. So ensure that every node you have configured either OS Watcher or the cluster health monitoring process is up and running. So this is the tool that manages the OS metrics and stores into text file on the OS level. So it basically collects the information based on the settings that you have scheduled. It collects the information like virtual memory statistic, netstat, and top services, and then network, traceouts, and processes, and IOStat. So this information is basically turned into individual text file. This OS Watcher does not come by default. You need to download this from the My Oracle support, and as you all know that My Oracle support does not come for free. It needs a license, and you need to log in and then restore it and configure it. You can configure this on every node, and you must configure this on every individual node. And for example, how you start this is start OSWWB. Now they renamed as OS Watcher block box. That's why it's called OSWBB now. So the default settings are 38 second, and the logs are retained for 48 hours. So maybe quite large size. So maybe you can take it down by running it every 60 seconds, which is like every 1 minute. So I actually recommend you to run every 10 seconds or 15 seconds, because 60 seconds, which is quite high, because 1 minute things can go rush, and 10 means 10 hours. So you're going to retain the data for 10 hours. So this information is very important to analyze and diagnose the node eviction issues. Another utility that you might have not heard or you might have heard is called OraTop. This utility actually is developed by a bunch of guys working with Oracle for performance monitoring and all the stuff. So this is not actually Oracle recommended, but people who work with Oracle, they have developed this. Since Oracle doesn't take the responsibility, you have to go through about it before you make use of it. So it is like a OS top-like utility on Unix platform. Currently it is available only on Linux platforms, unfortunately, because the other versions are yet to come. I don't know, we have to check with the guys who develop this. So it provides a near real-time database monitoring. As we all know that how we monitor the processes, how each process is taking CPU and memory, we go to the top command. So top command will give you the CPU utilization, virtual memory, and physical memory utilization, and then list the top services and processes that are running on that node. So similarly, if you want to do something similar to your Oracle database connections and the Oracle database, how your database is utilizing the connection, the resources on the node, OraTop utility is one of the utility that you can monitor it. So this is only possible with 11.2.02 and the higher databases. It's a very light utility, consumes about 0.20 memory and less than 1% of CPU. So this is not available from the internet. You cannot download it, unfortunately. So you have to have the MOS My Oracle support login, and you download the OraTop.zip format and zip it and set the permission mode to 755. And make sure the database that you are going to monitor with this utility, you have set the statistical level to typical and time statistics are turned on. And also there are, if you are not going to use, if you are going to use a default non-default user, for example, you want to have a read-only user just to monitor this utility, because this utility needs the database connectivity, so you need to have the user configured on the database. So if you don't want to have the system user to be managed this through to this utility, you can create a new user, read-only user, with the permissions on $v session, sysmetric, and some other process. So when you go to OraTap, when you Google it, you will get more information on that, how to configure, how to read it. In the next slide, I will give you the screenshot how you can monitor this thing. So let's imagine that it lists a window which is a live window. This shows you the interval level, like OraTap -I, define the interval level, and then you connect as sysdb in the first example. So the statistics are get refreshed every 5 seconds. The second one shows that you want to connect to a particular user, not the sys user. So ensure that you have given all the required permissions on those $v views. So this is the window, live window. You can use it for database, a single instance, and rack. So it has basically 4 sections: a header section, database section, top 5 DB events, and processes. So the first one represents the overall picture of your database. The database ID, what is the database name, and it's up for how many days, how many instances does it has, so what is the utilization of the database. And the second section, data section, that represents the instance, and then how much load of that instance on the node, like for example the CPU and all this statistic you see to your left. And then most importantly, what you see is how your database is functioning, like what are those top 5 events that are part of your database. We usually see these top 5 events either in AWR or ASH reports. So with this utility, now you can see this, you can manage to see those top 5 events on this utility. And the last one represents the information about your process, the database process, which process is consuming how much space, what is the information it gives. And also it will tell you the blocking information. If instance is blocking, or if a session is blocking other session, this information also is provided. So I would recommend you to go through this utility. This is really very handy for the rack administrators for proactive maintenance. There is another very important utility. Basically, it is a script developed by the Oracle staff, and this is not basically recommended by Oracle, in the sense they don't directly recommend this, but it's developed by the guys working with Oracle, and I know some of them who have developed this, and this is really very good. And this is basically a auditing utility. It's a bunch of scripts. What happens? It collects the information about the kernel parameters, packages deployed on the database. What you need to do is time to time you have to download the latest utility, and you run this in your environment to see if your existing environment is lack of some checks. Auditing is kind of auditing, like you do it on your database to ensure everything is quite smooth. And also, if you want to upgrade your database from 11.202 to 11.203, download this utility from my Oracle support, and then unzip the file and change the permission to 755 before you use it. You can also have 2 reports, like previous report and the current report, and you can have them compared between those 2 reports. It generates the output into a HTML file, and it gives you all the overall rating of your database health check, basically. So you can implement this as a part of your health checking, where you see the rating of your health out of 100 points. And also, when you download the latest version of this, it will tell you what are the bugs or fixes in the future released bugs, so you can apply them on your current environment. How you can use this as an example, you do this check -u to upgrade, in case if you plan to upgrade your database to 11.203 from 11.202 to 11.203. So I recommend you to run through this auditing tool to find out all the kernel parameters and the values and patches have been properly set, so that you can have a smooth and a successful upgrade. So the last command, it represents the comparison between a report 1 and report 2, which gives you the details between these two reports, so you can see what are the new bugs fixed in the new release. There is another statement, hang analysis, system state dump. We as a DBA quite sometimes come across where a database is hanged or instance is hanged and we don't know what's happening actually. Maybe it could be a system internal developed deadlock that leads to hang, or maybe a drastic performance degradation or latching issue. So sometimes you may not be able to connect to a database. So in this situation, you usually kill the blocking system in order to release that blocking. So how do you find out in case if any session is hang and preventing other sessions to proceed? So you can take the hang analysis using this. For example, if you're working with a RAG database, this is on the database level. If you're working with the RAG database with 2 instances or more than 2 instances, so you can connect to the survey, connect to the instance, and then you can run across all instances. You can collect the hang analysis. So what debug set inst all set this to all the instances of the RAG database, and then you collect the hang analysis of those instances level 3, and you got to wait for a few seconds and then run the command once again, and then verify that trace file. You can name out the file using the var debug. It will give you the file name, trace file name, where the information is being returned. So these are the levels of hang analysis that you can proceed. The lowest level is 1, 2, which is the minimal impact, and the highest is the 10, which is not of course recommended. Will have a lot of overhead on your system. So what is more important for you is the level 3, which actually dumps the information about the hang state. So you can easily know which process is being held and what are those other processes or sessions that are waiting for that session. So this information is quite handful, and you can use that information, and then you can kill the session in order to release the lock on the database. State of nodes. Basically, what is the information that you need to tune in and see in the hang analysis? It is the file that is generated. You see there are section called hang analysis, where you will have this information, cycles, block of many session. You will see that section when more than 10 sessions are waiting for a particular session which is blocked. So state of nodes, open chains, other chains. So basically you can verify this file for the more information on this. Dumping system state. Sometimes you see that memory is leaked, or maybe you suspect the performance degradation, and maybe sometimes you are not able to connect to the instance. So how you can connect? So you can use SQL plus prelim to connect to the database, and you can set it to the levels that you want to connect. So this is the information you do. You have level 10 and 266, and then you upload these logs to connect. So here are some references that I used, and a big thank you to all for listening. I hope the information that I have given in this session is quite useful for you, and now we'll take up some question and answers.
Thank you, Syed. Thank you so much for going through the topic. It was very interesting. I hope everybody agrees. We've got quite a lot of questions have come in, so please do bear with me whilst I just look down those questions. So before I go over some of the more technical questions, there are some general questions here. So the webinar is being recorded, and I will email everybody as soon as the video is up online. So you will be able to get access and go over bits. So there's a few questions on here where people have asked to go over particular points. So again, the best way to do that will be to watch the recording when it's available.
Oh, sorry. Actually, it is.
Similarly, the presentation slides themselves will also be available as well. So I'm going to put those up on the Redgate website, but I'll also add a link. There was a link to this on allthingsoracle.com. The great thing about going to allthingsoracle.com and viewing it there is that you will be able to ask questions in the comments box. And if you come across some questions that people have asked and you can actually help them out, then please add a comment there as well. Okay, so we've got a question in here. Thank you for everybody that has entered their questions in. I'm just going to try and go through these quickly. So the first question is, if you're installing Oracle 11.2, a rack environment in RHEL 6.3, and you're having issues with the second node ASM, which is having issues joining the cluster, the bond 1-to-1 is getting 164.x.x.x IP. Each time you reboot it, it gives a different IP for the cluster in Connect. Syed, do you have any ideas why that might happen? Okay, I do apologise, everybody. It seems that we've lost a connection with Syed at the moment. Hopefully he'll be back online shortly. So please do bear with us. There may be just a slight delay until Syed gets back online.
Hello.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep. Sorry.
Sorry, I was. Sorry, I said to mute because I got a call from the company that there is some issue. Okay. See, this is different from a setup to another setup. So this could be something to do with their network setup. Maybe if he can send me the call history and the log information, maybe I could help him. You know, without looking into the real things, it's very difficult because it's not just the theoretical base that we can question and answer.
Yeah, fantastic. So, yeah, please email that. So
yeah, you can email me. Maybe, yeah.
Do you have a slide with contact details, or maybe that could just be if you just reply to the email when I say that the video is ready, then I'll be able to forward that to you.
I think my last slide. Do you see this slide?
Yep.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. This you can write to me at syedjaffarhussain@gmail.com.
Thank you. There's a question here from earlier on in the webinar, and I wonder whether you could go back to slide number 12. One of the attendees is interested in to which command produced the output for slide 12.
Slide 12. Is this?
That's correct. Yes.
This is CRS-CTL query CSS or disk. CRS-CTL query CSS or disk. Squaring the word disk. I have given this example when you have issues with the voting disk. CRS-CTL query CSS or disk. This is the information that produces.
Great. Thank you. So we've got a question here. Hopefully this will make sense to you. It's in two parts, but I think they come together. So when you're looking at log files, how much of the log files can be monitored using ADRCI so for example, for Exadata, ADRCI is not monitoring the grid alert log.
I have no idea about how you manage with this utility using the cluster logs, maybe something different with the Exadata, I don't know. So I have no idea on this, basically.
Right, thank you.
It's actually this is mostly used for the database logs, trace files. With regards to 12C, with regards to the cluster logs, I don't see using this one. I haven't used it actually for myself.
Okay, thank you. We've got a question here. What is the best way to shut down a cluster?
The best way is to stop the cluster, of course, because even if the node is rebooting, it will trigger the cluster stop. This is the beauty of grid infrastructure. So better always, if you want to have no issues, then you need to stop everything like databases and other stuff, and then you stop the cluster. You need to make sure that after you stop the cluster, there is no binary process or any database process or maybe any other session exists. So you need to make sure after you stop the cluster, typing like ps-ef grep aura to find out that no sessions are left.
Fantastic. Next question. How do we debug an issue with a private interconnect? Is there some tips there, or again, is this something that if there's a particular issue, would it be better to email some more information to you?
Yeah, that's fine. I would love to have those information if they have any issues, and I'll try to help them, giving as much as information I know. So they can email me anytime, no issues.
Fantastic. Next question. Can the archiving of logs be changed so that you can retain more than 10 logs?
No, this is the default behavior, and there is no command that you can do it, because it is an internal mechanism built with the cluster process. So I don't think so that you can change that.
Thank you.
The only thing is you have to keep this as part of your backup policy. So maybe if you rename the files that are generated, then it will not be overwritten. So you might quite often, it's like a manual work, you want to keep it like more copies, so you rename them so it will not get rewritten with the name. So you maybe need to move the file to different name. So this way manually you can keep more than 10 copies. But these 10 copies are quite good to have, to look into the information.
Great, thank you. The next question. How can you monitor cluster nodes OS metric in real time or nil real time on a one terminal screen?
You basically don't need to monitor, because the process, if you are using OS watcher, it will be monitoring automatically. So you can forget about the OS metrics. Why? Because you don't want to have it all together running like same job. So let your OS watcher collect this real-time information for you and keep it in the log files. Maybe you can tail the files and then see it how things are adding up. What is more importantly, maybe you can configure the Aura tab, unfortunately, which is only available on Linux platforms, so to monitor real-time your database things. So I don't think so that you're required to monitor it all the time. So it's already written to the OS watcher. If you don't have OS watcher, then you need to open like different windows and then run those OS level commands. Or maybe you can use the Oracle 12c Grid Enterprise Manager Cloud Computing Cloud Controller, basically 12c OEM.
Great, thank you. So we've got another troubleshooting question here. Is it normal for a node to not rejoin the cluster after a soft reboot or blue screen. The question, finding that I must always power cycle the node to get it to rejoin the cluster using Oracle 11 GR2 on Windows 2008.
Actually, after the node eviction or node get rebooted, it must join the node. It must join the cluster. So you can always use the command OLS nodes to figure out which are active nodes. So if the node is not joining to the rest of the cluster, rest of the nodes in the cluster, that means the node having issues with the maybe underlying network to see other people. So you got to review the log files that I have given this CRSD log file, CSSD logs. So maybe you might have some issues seeing the voting disk, because voting disk is the main important thing where everybody comes and put their presence. So this is not normal. Something definitely wrong.
Thank you. Again, there are a few questions as I'm just going down the questions that I think are going to be sort of individual cases. So again, please do leave a comment on allthingsoracle.com or contact Syed on the email address that he gave you. The next question here, are you able to elaborate the changes in the listener stroke scan listener management in 11GR2 than from release 1? So what were the major changes from 11GR2? What were the major changes from release 1 to release 2?
Scan is the new feature introduced in 11G release 2. So this is now with 12C, with 11G release 2, what happens when you create a listener, it creates across all the nodes, irrespective of whether a database is running or not. This is because of this one node, rack one node feature as well, I can say. But for example, when you create more instances, you don't need to use different IP address. And when you move instance from one node to another node, you don't need to change the IP address of your server in the TNS configuration. So scan is like it's a single address representing across all your nodes as with one name. So on all the nodes, this will be up and running. So I would strongly recommend, if you're using the cluster, I would strongly recommend you to use the scan listener to take more advantages, like when you move instances from node to node, or when you add more instances, so that you will not touch your TNS configurations. So you might go with scan if you are going to 11G release 2.
Thank you. Also, a couple of questions around 12C. We're obviously as we're eagerly waiting the announcement as you are, since there's no details on that yet. So please just keep your eye on the Oracle Technology forums. I'm sure details will be put up there.
Exactly. So I'm currently tight-lipped, unfortunately. I cannot talk anything on 12C, but it's going to be very soon. And we are writing a book on 12C, which is Oracle Rack Expert, published by the A Press, and it's written by some well-known personalities like Caillou, Diaz Samshuddin, Tariq Farooq, and myself, and we are having quite a bit expert level information for that book. So maybe we are all just anticipating like you when they are going to announce it publicly. So once they announce, you will have everything on the website, so you can access everything.
Thank you. So the next question here is there any difference between using CRS CTL stop CRS over CRS CTL stop cluster to shut down the cluster?
Basically, what is recommended is to stop CRS CTL stop CRS, not CRS CTL stop cluster. Cluster when you stop CRS CTL CRS, so you are going to shut down the cluster, not the high availability services. So when you stop high availability services, it will stop everything. So when you do the clusterware cluster-wide commands, so this node won't be part of that commands. So it is always recommended to stop CRS, not cluster.
Thank you. Next question. Is there a way to manage Oracle alert logs through ADRCI?
Yeah, that's I told you that, yeah, you have to manage all those files using this utility. Furthermore, this you can review the Oracle documentation, because I don't quite oftenly use this.
Okay, thank you. And another question here is to do with Windows file location. So when you mentioned removing the /tmp files for cluster startup problems, do you know where these would normally be
That's
located
only,
on Windows?
no. This is specific to only Linux and Linux platform. And on Windows, no, there is no such file.
Thank you. So this question here, I guess you might be able to give some sort of advice, maybe. So how many rack nodes would you say are required to accommodate 5.9 high availability solutions? Or how many nodes would you recommend?
This basically depend upon the business requirement. It's not like same to everybody. So it's all depend on their decision, architectural decisions, and the amount of databases they are managing. For us, we manage more than about 150 database in 10 nodes. So it's all basically the requirement, the behavior of the business need. But the one thing is, the more you really need, you should not get fancy with the number of nodes. What I tell you is, what is most important for you is the evaluation, like a small cluster but number of clusters against a large scale cluster. So I would really recommend people to just have a good study before they go with this fancy attraction, like saying like I have 100 nodes, 200 nodes, or 50 nodes, something like that. So I always will ask people to have a study. So which is better, a large-scale cluster or small cluster setup but more clusters? So I would prefer small setup, more cluster environments, rather than managing a very large scale, because you have a lot of complexity managing the large scale cluster. I remember one point in time, I had like 26 nodes, and then the synchronization become very complex, and there was a instance that everything went down for few hours. So it was like a nightmare. So its managing is quite complex.
Thank you. Once again, a couple of more questions have come in at the end in terms of where will the video be available? Sorry, and in terms of presentation slides. Once again, I'll try and get that up online as quickly as I can. It may be early next week though, so I will certainly email everybody as soon as the video is available to view online, and include the presentation slides as well. I'll also include a link to the post on All Things Oracle, where you can leave further comments and ask more questions. So thank you once again for joining us for today's session. I've just put up the upcoming sessions on the screen. So once again, please do check these out and register. You can access all past webinars here as well at redgate.com/oracle-webinars. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, I'm going to be looking at a product now. So if you do want to hang around and have a look at this product, then please do so. Otherwise, I'd just like to say thank you once again to Syed Jaffar Hussain for presenting today's session. We've got some great feedback. So again, thank you once again for hosting this session. It was really interesting, everybody, and thank you to everybody for joining us today.
I thank you once again, everybody, for joining my session. I hope to see you in some other presentation, inshallah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to sign off as I have something to catch up, okay? Thank you, James.
Yeah. Thank you, and we'll speak soon. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so as I've just mentioned, I'm going to be looking at source control for Oracle now. So it's a new product by Redgate Software. It forms part of our deployment suite for Oracle, and this tool is going to make it a lot easier for you to manage database changes using source control and actually checking those changes into source control. You just give me a minute or so just to bring my my remote desktop across, and then I can get going with this presentation. Thank you again for hanging around and joining me for this part. Okay, hopefully you can see my remote desktop now. I'm just going to go back to the presentation as well. So the tool we're going to be looking at is source control for Oracle. I'm going to do a quick demonstration of the main features of the tool. But before I actually do that, I thought it might be a good idea to give you a very quick overview of what we'll actually be looking at and what this tool can do for you. So at Redgate, we like to name our tools with exactly what they do. So as you can imagine, so source control for Oracle makes it easy for you to source control your Oracle database code. And what the tool does is when you have it running, as you're working in the editor of your choice, so you can be using SQL Developer, you could be using Toad, you could be using Pure SQL Developer, you could be using any SQL editor. As you're working, as you're making changes to your database, source control for Oracle is going to recognize that the database is out of sync with your source control repository. So the important thing to note at this stage is that source control for Oracle isn't a separate source control system. It's going to provide that link between the database and your version control system, your own source control system. Currently it works with SVN and TFS. But as it recognizes changes that are different between the database and the repository, it's going to notify you, and then it will do all of the hard work of checking those changes into Subversion. And I hope the little diagram we've got up on the screen here, we've put checking in your changes is as simple as clicking a button, and this is what I'm going to show. I'm going to show you how simple it is to check changes into source control using this new product. I will be answering questions at the end, but again, please feel free to add your questions in as we go along. Okay, so let's go back to my desktop. So the first thing I want to do is just set the scene and imagine that I'm a developer within a team and we're all working on the same database. So we're all working on the same set of schemas here. And I've been making some changes to the database. My team members have been making some changes as well, but more importantly, I've just made a whole load of new changes, and I want to check these in to source control. So the first thing that I guess I would have to do is I might have a manual process already in place, but that's quite difficult. Firstly, I have to script these objects out, because the important thing is that a source control system works with files. It doesn't work with database objects. So already I have a problem there that I need to overcome. Secondly, I need to make sure that there's some way of keeping a record of the changes that I'm checking in. So I've got SQL Developer up here at the moment. I've got a couple of scripts that I'm going to run to simulate working on the database and then checking the changes into source control. But I've got source control open already, and one thing that I noted before is that it knows if there have been changes to the database that haven't yet been checked in to source control. And if we look at the bottom of the screen, we can see a little icon here, which is the icon for source control for Oracle, and it's got a red dot. So this means that there are projects that have new changes. So I'm going to click on here, I'm going to use this jump menu, and I'm going to jump straight to the project in source control for Oracle. So I've got the window open now. And we can see that the work that I've been doing is I've actually got a whole new set of objects. So these objects aren't yet in source control. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put these objects into source control. So I spoke before about how do you convert the objects into scripts and then put them under source control. Well, the product's going to do all of that for you. So I'm going to type in a log message. I'm going to click check in. So as easy as that, those objects are now in source control. I'm using Subversion, but it would be exactly the same as if I was using TFS as well. The great thing is, as I continue to work in my editor, again, I'm using SQL Developer, you could be using any other one. As I continue to work, again, I'm just going to simulate this. I'm just going to run this script here. This is going to make some more changes to the database. Source control for Oracle. Click on refresh. We'll pick up the changes that I've just made. So the script that I just ran there has made 5 changes. So we've got 3 new objects. We've also made some edits to 2 existing objects. The great thing about this is that if I just expand this bottom panel, we can see a side-by-side diff of the database and the source control repository. So these are obviously new items. So we've only got creation script here on the left-hand side. There's nothing yet in source control for this particular object, but this widget prices object and this widget package objects are objects that are already in source control, and we can see exactly where there are differences here. So for this one, as an example, we've added a new column whilst we work on a database that's different to the object that was checked into source control before. So this is enabling us to review the changes before we check them in. We're able to check in sets of objects together, or we can check in individual objects as well. The source control of Oracle is a bit more intelligent than just letting us select groups of objects or individual objects. If we select objects that are dependent on other objects, it's going to notify us, and this is what it's done now. As I've ticked this widget package one, it's saying that there are other objects that I haven't selected yet that reference this particular object, and I can click on this link here to select the other objects as well. Similarly, I can just select all objects and check them all in together as a group. Okay, so I'm going to write another log message, so just updating. Obviously, there's a nice bit of space here. You can write detailed message, and we certainly would recommend that you do write detailed messages, that as you're looking through the log, or if you need to go back and find out if something has gone wrong when you've deployed an application and you want to look back and see what changes were made, then you've got an accurate history here. And this is one of the really important things. If you're not currently using source, or you're not currently source controlling your database code, it's obviously very important. The same reason that application developers source control their application code, source controlling your database code is going to enable you to be able to go back and revert changes very easily and keep a record of everything, all the changes that you're making. So let's check these changes in. Once again, it's just as simple as clicking a button. So we've been looking at the check-in tab here. We've been checking changes in. There's another tab here which is the history tab. And Source Control for Oracle is going to take the information from your repository and populate this history. So it's going to keep a history of the changes for you. So we can see the two changes that I've just made. So those 12 objects that I've checked in. We can see that it was me that checked those in. If I just scroll down this little panel here, we'll be able to find some changes that my colleagues checked in. It also holds the revision number and the date and then the log message as well. But once again, we've got this side-by-side diff. So if we go up to this particular set of changes that I just checked in, again, we can scroll through here and we can look at a side-by-side diff of before and after these changes were checked in. And this one in particular, it looks like we've made a bit of a mistake here. So we've got +1, then -1, and +1 again. So this doesn't look quite right. So something has gone wrong with the application. We'll be able to go back and see and identify that possibly this is what caused this. So I've got another script here, so I'm just going to run this because I actually this will rectify this particular problem that I've just identified. Go back into source control. It's refreshed already, so we can see that we've got these two new changes. I did do a little bit of extra work. I've actually dropped a table here, so you can see as we've been going through. And actually, if we look in the history here, we can see that it actually highlights whether it's a new object, so create, whether the change was a create, whether the change was an edit. And for example, this one here, we've dropped it. This is another edit. And if we scroll down into the side-by-side view, we can see that we're going to update this mistake that we highlighted earlier. I put a bit more of a detailed message in this time, but I've taken the information that from Source Control for Oracle itself. So this is helping you in understanding exactly what's going on. So we've got the change type, we've got the object name, we've got the object type as well, and this particular schema. So I'm aware that I've gone through that quite quickly, but what I wanted to do to start with is just give you an idea of how you can be using this product as you're working, as you're making changes to the database. You want to check in new changes to source control. This is how easy this product is and how easy this product will enable you to do that. So I'm going to go back a step here because I want to look at this particular project, actually show you the project that I was working within. And we've got a bit more information here that we can see. So you can run multiple projects together. I've only got one project set up at the moment. I am going to set up a new project. We clearly see that this particular project, we've got our database here, which is the obstacle database. We've got schema, which is the Widget James schema. And we've got our repository here as well. We've got a little bit of information about the status. So in this first part of the demonstration, I asked you to imagine a team of developers all working on the same database, a shared database or a shared schema. But you might also be considering, or you may already work in a scenario where you're actually working on, where team members are working on private schemas, or each developer has a local copy of the database. Now, Source Control for Oracle brings more benefits to that scenario for you if you're already working in that way. So it will help you work within that way as well. And that's what I'm going to set up now. So I'm going to set up a new project. And what I want you to imagine in this particular project is that we've got a new member of the team, and we want to get them up and running with a copy, with the latest copy of the database, the latest copy of the schema. And we're going to do this, we're actually going to populate the schema from source control. So the rest of the team have been working on the schema, they've been making changes, they've been checking changes into source control. So rather than updating the schema from one of the working copies, we're going to update this schema from source control. Hopefully this will also illustrate how you can be using it in a dedicated environment as well. So let's go back into SQL Developer. This was the schema that I was working in, widget James schema. So you can see the different type of objects here. Just going to minimize that. We've got another schema here called widget Michael. At the moment this is completely empty, so there are no objects here. So we've just set up the shell, and we now, as I mentioned, I now want to populate that. So I'm going to go back to source control. I'm going to create a new project. This will also show you how easy it is to get up and running with the product in the first place, and how easy it is to connect your database to source control. I'm using a TNS connection. You could use a manual connection as well. So the new team member is Michael. Of course, using a shared repository, so all the team are checking the changes into the same repository. Once again, I'm using Subversion. Could use Team Foundation Server as well. Next thing I need to do is link a schema. So the schema I'm going to link to source control is this widget Michael schema. I've already set up a repository before when I set up the original project, so I'm just going to select this here. If you didn't, or you could set up a new folder, and we have the option to do that on this tab. And now we have a little summary. I'm going to keep this named as widget Michael, just so that you can aware that this is a different project than the one we were working on before. But importantly, this is set up where we've got developers each having their own private schema or their own dedicated database. I'm going to create this project. So it's refreshing now. Once again, what it's actually looking at is the difference between the database and what's in the source control repository. So before, this message here that we were looking at, it was telling us that there had been changes that we've made to the database that hadn't yet been checked into source control. So it's telling us we need to check these changes in. But this time, because this widget Michael schema is empty, it's actually saying we've got some changes to get. So there's nothing yet in the database, but there are some objects that are in source control. This would be the same as if when we're working in the first place, had I been making changes, Michael would be able to get those changes as well. So that's what the get latest. We've seen that the check-in tab, again, as Michael would make changes to the database or his copy of the schema, he'd then be prompted to check those into source control. But this time, what we're going to do is we're actually going to get the latest changes. Once again, we can review all of those changes. They're all going to be new objects, obviously, because this schema is empty, but we can actually drill down and see what all of those changes are. And we're just going to click on this button here to apply the selected changes to the database. Again, it goes through that really, really quickly. Let's go back into SQL Developer. Let's refresh, for example, the tables. We now have all of those in this schema. The important thing is that these changes have been, this schema has been populated from source control. Okay, so that was a very quick run through. I would be very happy to go over any points or answer any questions that you might have about the tool. But just to recap, so source control for Oracle enables easy database source control with SVN and TFS. It helps to avoid human errors normally associated with manual and lengthy processes of trying to check database changes into source control. You can use it with any editor. So if you've got a team of developers, and some of them are using SQL Developer, some of them are using Toad, some are using PL SQL Developer, it doesn't matter. It's a standalone tool, and they can all use this product. If you work within a dedicated environment, or each developer has their own copy of the schema, it will support you. If you're thinking of moving to that setup, to, I guess, in a way, work in a more similar way to your application developers, then it will enable you to set that up in an easy way. It's an integral part of the deployment suite for Oracle, so it works side by side with products, with the other products, Schema Compare for Oracle. And we offer a 28-day trial, which you can download at redgate.com/source-control-for-Oracle. Or you could just go to redgate.com/Oracle. So I would recommend that you download the product, give it a go, and see if it's something that can help you out. So if you have any questions, or there's any bits you'd like me to look over again, please do type that in your question panel. Thank you. I've got some nice feedback in, so thank you for leaving your feedback. I'm glad you think the product looks nice. We certainly do as well. So once again, if you'd like to find out a bit more information, please go to redgate.com/Oracle. As I mentioned before, I will be sending everybody an email when the video is available. I'll include a link to this page as well. If you do have any questions, or you'd like to if you think of things afterwards, then please reply to that email. So thank you once again for joining us for the main presentation. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at source control for Oracle. Please register for upcoming webinars, and do check out the trial at redgate.com/Oracle. Thank you very much, and good day or good evening, depending on where you are.